I come to you really as both a scientist and an artist, and so this is very much an overlap area for me. And what I need to really start by asserting is that drawing and paintings are not copies of reality. We're dealing with reality here. They translate, and it's very important to understand the process of translation for the drawer and for the viewing public. And when I make an image, I make it for you. And you can either walk past it, you can like it or dislike it, but it doesn't really very much matter. You can just walk by and ignore it. But when nature makes an image, it had better be good, because the costs are very high and poor design gets eliminated. So what do I mean when I say nature makes an image? Well, take these frogs. Some look like the grass stems, moss, or the lichen that they sit on. And they've evolved into miniature paintings of their own little micro-niche, their ecological micro-niche. Others resemble bird droppings. One may mimic a poisonous kind of frog. And the frogs that are less like grass, moss, or lichen, less like a bird dropping, get eaten. And they fail to reproduce, which is even more important. And that's been the end of story for trillions of generations of frogs over many, many millions of years. So you can see that the pressure on frogs to improve their image is absolutely crucial and is ruthless in its enforcement. Well, other images in nature are unlike anything else, such as these Makerere irises, which are flamboyantly distinctive, and they demonstrate a quite different convergence between nature's image making and that of an artist. Both seek to seduce the eye of the beholder. Both exploit the digital modular structure on which vision is based. Lots of little tiny little bits of information being sorted out in the brain. And the main beholders that sit in judgment of Makerere irises are their pollinators. And it's been the structure of insect eyes and insect brains that has made them receptive to the specific color contrasts, the specific geometries and the shapes and the spots and the stripes. No pollinators, no reproduction. It's a very, very severe discipline. Well, great variation in the petals and bracts of flowering plants has allowed them to form relationships with bees and other insects by devising colors and other attractants to their flowers and to the bait, which takes the form of nectar. Now, advertisement for pollinators in the sex lives of these orchids, which come from Kitulo National Park in Tanzania, can get even more explicit. Here be sweetness or maybe floral deceptions, teases, as when the flowers actually mimic receptive females, that is, receptive insect females. Understanding the processes involved in seeing and the natural history of animal responses to what is seen has many implications for artists and also for our exploration of how differences have evolved in frogs in flamboyant flowers, in fruit, in exquisite marine life, and much else besides. Now, because many spectacular signal patterns are just ingeniously modified camouflage, let's begin with those masters of disguise, chameleons, which can be very abundant lizards in parts of Africa and Madagascar. And they congregate near places where there's plenty of their insect prey, and here males fight for access to females. Well, in a fight, it's not much good looking like a leaf. So male competitors transform themselves quite suddenly into hissing snake-like monsters with swollen throats and a big bite. And because the chromatophores that give chameleons their various colors are aligned sort of unit by unit and along bands or grids in a similar geometry to the patterns on this panel, in actual life, it's about 6 foot high, so, well, 6 foot across. The chameleon's body provides the background for a systematic manipulation of visual and physiological processes to serve two very contradictory ends. One is to conceal yourself, and the other is to show off. And the chameleons do both. Well, the simplest type of camouflage matches the color of an animal with its surroundings. And these East African sengis, which are usually called elephant shrews, or used to be called elephant shrews, are mapped beside the soil colors in the regions where they occur. And matching local soil color becomes critical during the dry season, when they're particularly vulnerable to birds of prey. And their colors were selected in predatory eyes. That's where the color arrived from. They were selected in the eyes of predators. And bad matches ended up in the talons and crops of hungry hawks. And in fact, it was the sharp eyes of hawks that have also selected the color patterns of another bigger kind of sengi. This time, the most typical surroundings are dead leaves and broken twigs and vegetable debris. And to match such complicated backgrounds, the checkered sengi has a coat pattern that has averaged out the proportions of light and dark in the form of spots and stripes along a grid that runs down its back. Now, look just how systematic this grid is, and compare the sengi's back pattern, which is the one on the left, with those of the 4 other completely unrelated animals that are also frequent victims of hawks. The next one is a mouse, then a squirrel, a bird, and a lizard. And every one of these designs is a translation, a sort of digitally programmed painting of the background. Their resemblances lie in their common history of fooling the eyes and the brains of hawks. Sorry, we have to go back one there. Sorry, no, we don't. For ostriches, predators come a lot bigger than hawks, but most of them are easy to outrun, so males can afford to be conspicuous. And when male ostriches threaten one another, they become black targets surrounded by an agitated, flouncing boa of white plumes. And here it's important to realize that it was the eyes of other ostriches that favored this blatant target design. By contrast, the appearance of this juvenile ostrich, we've gone one too far, was selected in the eyes of ostrich predators. And these full bellies are where less well camouflaged ostrich babies ended up. Well, most juvenile animals get gobbled up by predators. So why does the little disc-like angelfish at the center of this array look like a target on a shooting range? Well, it's the mimic of a poisonous sea slug, and while still small, it even imitates the sluggish movements of its toxic model. From almost identical tiny offspring, two species of adult angelfish end up with opposite stripes, one vertical and the other horizontal. That's on the far right. And the ones on the left are a neat demonstration of how patterns can morph from one design to another within the short life of a fish. All patterns have to accommodate to the shapes and functions of their bearer's anatomy. And for an illustration of this, the colors literally outline the functional anatomy of woodpeckers. They advertise their presence by hammering hollow branches. Hey, listen, tap, tap, tap. And then they also, in addition to the hammering action, they're further advertised by red cockades and striped necks. Hey, look. And beaks that can chisel away hard wood can also defend hard-earned holes. So it's likely that a further function for those head patterns is to warn off would-be intruders from occupied woodpecker holes. Now, a vigorous and colorful defense of their precious self-made holes becomes explicit in the tropical fruit-eating woodpeckers that we call barbets. The dagger-like beaks of Megalaima barbets, which are the ones illustrated here from southeastern Asia, are bedded in brightly colored masks, rather like the black and yellow of a wasp advertises its possession of a sting. But what determines the main colors of their masks? Well, it seems likely that those barbets that defend their holes with their heads out in the open show mainly red and yellow masks, while those that mainly defend from inside their dark holes have predominantly blue masks. And this is because blue is more visible at low light levels in the dark. And I found a very neat confirmation of this color trend in the forests of western Uganda, where 4 little flycatcher species called wattle-eyes have broad and brightly colored wattles around their eyes, like a great big sort of swollen band all around their eyes, like spectacles. And those up in the sunny canopy have red wattles, while those in the dark undergrowth glow a bright electric blue. And the wattles of the 2 other species, flying in the middle layers of the forest, are green. Those are the ones living above the bluebirds, and purple below the red ones. Natural selection consistently favors blue signals at low light levels and red where there is more light. This finds quite dramatic expression in the cerulean blue testicles and butts of monkeys that swagger through the undergrowth of African forests. And most notable of these are Hamlin's monkey from Central Africa, that's the one at the lowest left, and the red-rumped Diana monkey, which is center right, which is a canopy species. Well, natural selection Here, the pattern of a Hamlin's monkey can be compared with those of other Gwenon monkeys. All have evolved colors and patterns that help turn plain, functional postures into memorable and species-specific geometry. Circles, ovals, triangles, loops, or sharply angled lines, or edges of black and white, red or orange. And momentary as those postures may be, each projects its own messages into the eyes of its ready-primed beholders. Paris fashions eat your heart out. I've studied the face patterns of one group of species that are genetically very closely related. They're called the Cephus, or red-tailed monkeys, And here are portrait and profile views of 9 species, and at bottom right, a reconstruction of their common ancestor. Now, a slight tendency towards blue skin in one population has culminated in brilliantly blue faces in the mustached monkeys. There's the one on the bottom left. And it's very, very closely related, red-eared monkey, also on the left and immediately above, which has a red nose and flanked by cheeks with bold, horizontal black and white stripes. Well, many experiments by neuroscientists in many countries have revealed that black and white stripes stimulate the eyes and brains of animals. And one implication of this is that zebras, surrounded by stripes from the day they are born, have eyes that become hungry for stripes, just as their bellies thirst for their mother's milk. Now, zebra stripes recur in many organisms at various scales. There are zebra finches, zebroid invertebrates, and many, many species of zebroid sea life, especially fish. Vivid black and white stripes scarcely exist in inanimate nature, so mimicry is out. They're not copying anything. However, black and white stripes patterns represent one of the strongest of visual stimuli, precisely because their very structure incorporates some of the most important sensors in the retina-brain visual complex. That is the whole relationship between the sensors in your eye and the way the brain makes sense of all those little bits of information. Black and white stripe patterns also are super stimuli. They've really encapsulated the most basic elements of receptors. They most notably register contrasts, edges, orientation, spacing, and of course linearity, and a lot of other properties too. Now, how stripes might have developed in all the diversity of fish and other fauna remains to be studied, but here's how I think it happened in zebra ancestors. Types of solitary proto-horses occupying territories in dense forest began to occupy more open court and exposed them to more predators, which, as solitary animals, they were vulnerable. But social behavior brings the advantages of more eyes on the lookout and greater security for individuals. Sociability commonly begins or is built on the prime social bond for any mammal, that of mothers and their young. And in the case of equids, this bond is expressed by nibble grooming. And the base of the neck and the end of the rump, both places where the skin tends to form wrinkles, are the preferred areas for grooming. And I reckon stripes most likely began as visual emphasis of those wrinkles, which became indicators, which said, nibble me here, please. Nibbling involves small movements. Where are we? Close to the stripes. And research has shown that any movement triggers very, very strong responses in mammalian eye-brain systems. And herein lay the mechanism for a switch in which one-on-one foal-to-mother tactile bonding could become a plural visual bond in which any other zebra could become attractive. And with time, such striping expanded until it covered the whole animal, rendering every zebra attractive to any other zebra, even at a distance. And modern zebra foals actually recapitulate just such a development, beginning as actual nibblers, but soon graduating into empty nibblers that may stand up to a meter away from their partner. And eventually, even the nibbling stops, and thus completing the switch from physical grooming to visual grooming. And for modern zebras, the attractions of social life culminate in the mere act of standing beside another zebra. And I made this sculpture to demonstrate just how transformative and imperious stripes can be. And the monochrome copy on the left allows you to enjoy the form, the anatomy, and the surface modeling of the zebra's torso. And this is the colored copy on the right, overrides all that. And in spite of being the very same sculpture, it's not only zebra eyes that get drawn in. I, like a zebra, am attracted to stripes. And I've gained some satisfaction in discovering that their power is grounded in the way receptors work in mammalian eyes. As a scientist, I enjoy exploring some of the whys and wherefores in animal patterns, and as an artist, I enjoy knowing that their attractiveness originates in the eye of the beholder. Thanks. Bye-bye.